Hello guys, welcome to another video. Here to teach you today all about bow drill for beginners. Let's get into it. So what is the bow drill? So it's a method of friction fire that our ancestors would have used. It's primitive technology essentially, been around since the Stone Age, and originally we would have used hand drill, and then we worked on making a mechanical version with what's known as a bow. So it's a really great way to get a fire going using friction, wood onto wood. So what do we need for a bow drill? So we need some tinder to actually get our fire going. So I've just collected some bracken here, some dried bracken, and I've started to work it in my hands into what we know as a bird's nest, or a tinder bundle essentially, to catch that ember. You're going to need a bow, which is one I made earlier, a little hazel rod with a slight flex and bend in it, then a piece of cordage. You can use natural cordage, I've opted for paracord just because it was easier. You also need a spindle, which is this thing here. Again, it's just a piece of hazel that I've shaped and cut into a spindle. You want it to be about this sort of size or a little bit longer, and then you want to shape that end so that it can sit in what's known as the bearing block. We also need a hearth board. I've got two here made out of ivy that I've carved myself, and I've left in the garage just to dry out and season. I've already worked on a notch here, and I will be notching in with my knife here to actually allow us to catch that ember. May even start a new one down here, but I'll show you the full process. But essentially this is just ivy cut off from a garden coppice, and I've split it down, seasoned it so it's nice and dry and ready to take an ember from our spindle. As I say guys, we need a tinder bundle, and I've just prepped this bracken's bird's nest out of dried bracken. And we're going to set this aside, but a quick tip I will say is just have everything prepared. Patience is everything really with this. You don't need to rush it. It can take as long as it takes, and the last thing you want to do is fail your fire because of lack of preparation essentially. Right, we also need what's known as a bearing block to bear down on this spindle and give it the pressure that we need onto the hearth board. So primitive ancestors of ours would have used things like deer antler with a notch carved out of it with flint tools, limpet shells, a stone, anything like that that's got less friction in it than another piece of wood. You can use other pieces of wood as well, but again you need as little friction as possible. So a bit of spit in that wooden bearing block, and possibly some green leaves as well crushed up so that it's a little bit more lubricated at the top. Then that should work perfectly fine. But I tend to find that deer antler works best, or a limpet shell, or steel modern equivalents. So speaking of steel modern equivalents, because I'm a rad ex-skateboarder, I use a skateboard wheel as my bearing block because it's actually got bearings in it. So this really does help, and is a quick little tip that I use so that there's no friction in that whatsoever, and it gives it a nice spin. It's kind of cheating, but you know, it's just my quick tip. I'm an ex-skateboarder and I brought it along with me, so why not? The other thing you need is what's known as an ember pan, or something to catch the ember. You can use the tip of your knife, you can use the tip of an axe, tip of a saw if you've got that on you, a little piece of bark, or anything, any leather or anything like that that can catch an ember. Even a leaf, if it's thick enough, you know, isn't going to snap and break. Just to catch that ember and get us going. So I'm going to try and forage one of those now for us. So I think for today's purposes I'm actually going to use the other hearth board I made with an oak leaf. I think that might work. So how I set up for the bow drill, what I like to do is take the bow under my arm with the string facing in towards my body. I then load the bow with the spindle I'm going to use, and I place the spindle on the inside part of the string, between the string and the bow. And I always face the burnt end that I'm going to use, the rounded end that's going into the hearthboard, pointing up to the sky, so that when I grab this string I can flip it round and it's pointing the right way down towards the ground, with the chamfered end at the top, which I can place into my bearing block like so. And I've got complete hands free when it's into my arm like this. It's under my arm, it's nice and tight, it's not going anywhere. So what you then want to do is finding a decent bit of ground. This isn't great because got differing bits of ground levels, but you want to put your ember pan down first and foremost. You then want to put your hearthboard down like that. And what we're trying to do is just really burn in before we actually cut this notch. So you want to place this spindle inside of that notch, like so. And we want to step on top of the hearthboard here like this, and getting right over it, we want to start bowing in. Keeping loads of pressure. Keep loads and loads of pressure on, using the whole length of the bow, and putting the outside of my my hand on the outside of my shin here to really lock in and create that downward pressure. If you're not putting enough pressure on, what you can get is this squeak. And I hear that all the time, and it just means that there's not enough pressure on. As long as you've got enough pressure on, you shouldn't hear that squeak, and you should start seeing smoke pretty rapidly. So I think that's burnt in now. So we're starting to get a bit polish on here, so what I like to do is just take some of that off, but not compromising the overall shape. Just so that there's a bit more friction and a bit less in terms of shiny polished material that's not going to work. It's at this stage that we can start to cut our notch here to catch the dust, which is going to form our ember on this ember pan here. So what you want to be trying to do is come about 1/8 into this hole here. I'm doing this with a knife, but you can do it with a saw first and then the finishing touches with your knife. But we're just going to work this as our little notch to catch our ember. So I'm just going to work on this and I'll bring you back. So it's at this stage that you want to be absolutely prepared, because you've done your notch, you've cut it in, and you want everything at the ready, easy to hand. So you want your hearthboard with your notch in on your ember pan. You want your bow, bearing block, your spindle, and your Tinder Bundle. And what you can use as well is something called a coal extender. You can use anything really, char cloth, a bit of cramp ball. I'm going to be using this today, which is called the Chaga mushroom, the true tinder fungus. Have everything in place, you're good to go. So let's do this. So I load up the bow. Place the bow into the hearthboard. Get my bearing block onto the spindle. And then I'm really going to go for an ember now. So I think we've got an ember there. So yeah, we're smoking down here, so that's a big ember. You've got to really lift your feet carefully at this stage. And as I say, you've got to just be patient and take your time with this, lifting everything slowly because you don't want to lose that ember. So at this stage you just want to let it build, till it's a glowing ember that we can put into our Tinder bundle. You should just be able to see that glowing now. I've got a glowing ember. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take my little chaga mushroom, transfer the ember over, you can see that there. And that's just going to help us with our bird's nest. And we're going to take the bird's nest and the ember. We're going to warm this bundle up by letting a lot of oxygen in there. Before we blow it into flame. The wind can help us with this as well. There we go. There we have it, guys. So guys, it was down there and you can't see anything. Always leave no trace. As soon as the bundle went up, I stamped it out. It's really heaty around here, so we don't want any fires. Just thought I'd show you quick and easy bowdrill tips today. At the end of the video, guys, I hope that you've liked it. If you have at any point and want to learn more primitive skills, give it a little like below. Don't forget to subscribe if you're new to the channel and like this kind of thing. And without further ado, I'll see you again on the next one.
Yo, entering the planet, we were born in 1990s. Censoring the damage through the years quite precisely. Peppering the cabbage every day with new rhyme schemes. Venturing the stranded and entirely unlikely. Firelight.